guys doing?
Very good. How are you?
Good. Hey, thanks for being here. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff you guys could be doing on a beautiful day like this, but I appreciate you being here. And one thing that people always talk about, like, oh, you're gonna go face the media, and really, I really enjoy this with you guys because I think this is a unique set of media members, right? You guys seem to be really engaged in special teams, like special teams, follow special teams, and I know a lot of my counterparts around the country don't have that kind of luxury. So I appreciate it and thankful that you guys are here. A couple things about where we're at and where we're going. Finished off 2021. It was a really successful season for us, special teams wise. Felt like we made impact in certain games, but we're losing some guys. But the past is the past. We've got to move on. And we're losing a couple high production, right? So a couple seniors in Austin Spiewak, Ryan Gersonde, Caleb Shudak. All three guys that I felt did a really good job as seniors in helping push the room forward and push our team forward. The production we're gonna miss with Caleb is certainly significant. The production, I think, you look over the last 4 or 5 years at that position has been really significant with Caleb and Keith and Miguel. You go back on and on to Marshall, right, and look at Keith as a freshman. You go over and look at those things. The production is significant. I do feel like we've got good guys coming in, or guys that are waiting for their opportunity at that position. Also, if you look at kind of what we're doing right now, we're moving forward. We're trying to push as many guys forward as we can, as core players, as returners, as specialists, and we're doing that the way that we operate in spring football. We focus on punt, field goal block. Those are the 3 phases that we install. We install scheme. So those are the 3 things that we work right now. Still kind of things are cloudy up in the air with who's doing what and who's going to play where and who's going to start, all those things. But that's kind of where we're at right now. If you're looking kind of forward, some of the guys that I think that have done a really good job, some younger names that maybe you haven't heard of, and some guys that maybe haven't been as involved in the special teams. I think everyone right away knows the significant loss with Henry Marquez and Ivory Kelly Martin, right? Those are 2 guys that graduated in that last class that were significant contributors to us. But you have Terry Roberts, you got Riley Moss, you've got Kyler Fisher, you've got Cooper Dejean, who kind of came on last year, Monty Potterbaum, Logan Klemp, right? Higgins, the guys that are coming on that are really, really pushing forward and really helping us a lot in special teams. Appreciate their leadership and things that they've done so far. So with that, questions that you guys may have.
How have you seen Torrey develop as a leader?
As a leader? I think that's something that's not necessarily, he's not overly comfortable with right now, but I think, as he and I have talked, guys are going to look to him regardless. One, he's a little bit older in the room, a little bit more mature, a little bit, as you guys saw yesterday, a little bit more mature. But then also, he's played and performed well. So I think guys immediately look to him for that. I think he's taken a little bit different approach in the sense of how he communicates, not only with me or with the team, but or with the unit. I think he's looking at ways to represent other guys as well. So I've seen him take a step forward. He's still a work in progress, but definitely happy with what he's been doing.
He's holding now, is that right?
He is, yeah.
Is he like your number 1 holder? Or is he trying to make him a holder?
He's trying to be, yeah. I mean, no disrespect to Torrey or anybody that's done it, but I think we lost a really good holder in Ryan Gersonde. And I think that's a position and that's a player I think kind of went unheralded throughout his contribution. I think if you ask Keith or Caleb, they would sign off on that. Like, he was vital to their success. And Ryan was very good at it, at his role, and understood the role, and he was sort of the glue within the room quietly. Didn't get a lot of praise or anything like that outside of our building or outside of our room, but it's definitely a tough act to follow. But Torrey's working on that. Same thing with Nick Phelps, working Cooper Dejean as well there, who did it in high school and was pretty good at it. So, yeah.
What do you look at when you're trying to figure out, okay, who's going to be the best holder for next year?
Glad you asked. Okay, so first off, you have to have good hands, right? Have to have good hands. Quick getting to the spot, right? The spot, tilt, strings. That's what we always talk about, right? So spot, getting it on the exact spot that the kicker marked. Okay, the tilt, each kicker's different. They all prefer a different type of tilt that they want forward or to the side. And then also the strings, making sure the strings are pointed to the target. A lot of that has to do with the snapper. So if the snapper snaps what we call a 12, if you're looking at a clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6, 9, if a snapper ever snaps a 6, that's like the cardinal sin in snapping for field goal, because now the holder's got to work and he's got to get the laces all the way around. But typically this is a fine movement. We prefer 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock for the snap if it's not a 12. So he gets it down and then turns the strings how he wants them for the kicker. But all that's predicated off the kicker. So that's kind of how, and what we're looking for. Again, soft hands, have to be able to take command because you are the quarterback of the field goal unit. And then also a guy that has athletic ability. I'm sure you guys have paid attention. We like to run a couple fakes every now and then.
I was just going to say, I mean, Cooper Dejean, that seems like would be a huge luxury if you could be your holder. I don't know how, do you have a lot of, I mean, I guess you have a lot of say in that, right? Like, if you want him there?
I hope so. That's the head coach.
That's what I'm saying.
He's the final veto power. But I think with Cooper, he's an exceptional athlete. Right? We've all saw what he did in high school, right, with the ball in his hands. I think that part, right, that we all saw him as a quarterback. Okay, now you look at him as a holder. I promise none of you guys paid attention to him as a holder in high school. Maybe I shouldn't be. I don't think anyone did, because I barely did. So I doubt you guys did. Anyway, my point is that, you know, he has a unique ability with the ball in his hands, and I think that's part of that position. Again, it's a position most people don't think about or don't think about. Everyone blames the kicker for a missed kick. Well, if you go and you watch and you really look closely, a lot of times he's either off the spot, the tilt is not what the kicker wants or what he expected when he's striking the ball. You know, everything we're trying to do kicking field goals is trying to compress the ball, hit the sweet spot the way the kicker wants to. So.
Is that
It seemed
something
like
you want?
it seemed like the communication with Colton Rastetter and Keith especially was so ongoing that they were almost in tune with what they want to do. Is that a little bit too high for a new holder to go in with a kicker, or do you think that they have the potential to kind of hit that same sweet spot?
I definitely think they have the potential to do it. It takes reps, right? It takes constant communication and it takes chemistry. So those are things that it takes for a kicker and a holder and a snapper to work a clean operation. I promise you guys can all go watch tape now and watch games and see. You watch the NFL guys do it. It's marvelous. It's unbelievable, right? Because it looks like the snapper snaps the ball and bang, there's laces. We call that a dime. You're snapping a dime right to him, bang, perfect. Holder doesn't have to do anything but put the ball down. It's not like that all the way in college. In high school, it's like hard to watch for me, a guy that's into it, right? But you know, in college, there's more spinning and twisting of the ball to get the ball the way the kicker wants it. But going back to your question, I think there's chemistry that's involved. That's part of the deal with using a player that's not a specialist, right? Because Cooper's off busy getting yelled at by Coach Parker, and he's trying to make tackles, interceptions, and all that stuff. And then, oh, by the way, hey, field goal period, you're up. You know, so it's not as easy doing it that way as it is working with a specialist. Keith and Caleb have held for each other in practice. Right? Two kickers, they held for each other at one point, right? Because they felt the kickers knew who had the better hold, and this is the hold I want. So it's just a fine little art that I knew nothing about before I started coaching special teams, but now I see how it makes or breaks a unit and comes down to points.
Would you like to have that resolved by the end of spring to get kind of that communication going in the fall, or is that something that could be decided in August?
Yeah, I wish it were done yesterday, but it's not going to happen. Right? This is what we're working on right now and trying to figure out, identify who is it, and then you know how we're operating, and just going from there. But those are the three guys that have been working there, and I think I'm pleased with how all three of them have been working.
What about the kicking part of it? You lose an All-American caliber kicker and Caleb Shudik. You've got an incoming freshman. You've got a couple of guys who have been here for a few years. Where do you see the breakdown? And is this one that's going to go to the last possible week like Keith and Caleb did a few years ago?
Yeah, I would see it going into camp, personally. I think all three guys have not played a college football game, right? So that's part of it, right? That's part of getting them ready to that point. And frankly, I can't tell you I don't see anyone leading or trailing right now. I see them all kind of the same. I think they would tell you the same thing. But I see the competition going into the summer and probably into fall camp. But I'm pleased with where everyone's at. Again, we're all on a different journey. We're all trying to figure out. And you guys play golf? Any of you guys play golf well? No? Okay, me neither. So if the guys that do play golf well, what I've been told from people that do play golf well, it takes a long time to get your swing and be consistent. Right? Be consistent. It takes work and it takes reps. It takes driving range. It takes now, okay, we put you out on the course, and now we got to play you in conditions. It takes a long time. Right, we work on that with, like last year with Aaron and Lucas, Aaron Blom and Lucas Amaya, and Drew was in high school. He should still be in high school right now. I always remind him, like, you should be passing notes to your friends I guess they don't do that anymore. They text each other in high school, but you know what I mean. That's what he should be doing right now, but he's here, right? So my point is, like, we're working trying to get all these guys to the point where they're comfortable with their swing, they're confident, and they can replicate it over and over and over. No different than the Masters was last week, right? I don't know if I've ever been more intrigued with golf swings than this Masters, and watching and seeing like how consistent guys can be and how they strike the ball. That's really all kicking comes down to. You know, and then having the confidence to, like you saw the last two guys we had with Keith and Caleb. I'm not sure I've seen two confident kickers going out and making a kick in Kinnick Stadium when the whole world's on top of you, right? Those guys are phenomenal at it. It takes a long time. It takes reps. It takes, like I said, it takes confidence to get to that point. So that's what we're working on.
So to go based off that, how do you avoid, I guess for guys who never played in college football games, do you have conversations with them about, you look at the past 5-6 years of Iowa football, I mean, it's been probably the most consistent kicking team in the country. How do you sort of, I guess, not lower their expectations, but keep them confident and not make sure they're not nervous when they're stepping into such a big role that's been so vital over the past?
I think the expectation is the expectation, right? So it is what it is, and the standard's the standard. So that part isn't going to change. However, what we're trying to do, what we work on consistently and constantly, is we're putting guys in situations. It starts with getting off again, using golf, the driving range, right? Getting them off the driving range to the point where they can go on to hole one. So now we practice routine ad nauseum, right? To the point where there will be a time when we go over and practice in Kinnick, the team practice in Kinnick, we'll go over before and work on pregame routines. If you guys only knew how much we work on pregame routines, like what's your pregame routine? How few of balls can it take you to get warmed up to perform in Kinnick? Because what happens throughout a game, you may hit about 80 to 100 balls. We don't hit that many in practice, but in a game situation, it takes you 20, 25, sometimes guys 30 balls, 30 swings to get warmed up to go to a game. So we practice that part of it. We practice the routine of going into the first quarter. Okay, then we'll practice the routine of coming out of halftime. How many balls does it take you to get warmed up? Okay, now we're in competition. We have different scripts. We call it simulations, right? So we have what we call a sideline sim, where we'll simulate coming from the sideline into a kick or to a punt. We have what we call a game day sim, where we're simulating a game, and we'll give them a script. Sometimes we'll take a script from an old game, and all right, team A, team B, you guys are against each other. Okay, two kickers on each, a kicker on each side, a punter on each side, a snapper on each side, and we go through and play a game. It takes time, right? Because one thing about being a specialist, there's plenty of idle time, and if you ever play golf, you have idle time when you're playing golf. Usually bad things go through your head, but that you have to work through that stuff as a player. So those are things that we're constantly trying to get to the point where they're confident enough to do it in front of their teammates and then do it in front of the fans.
It'd be tough for a lot of people to go as long as Torrey's gone without seeing his family. How have you seen him overcome that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because that's the personal side of Torrey that I don't think people, it's hard to imagine, right? It's hard to imagine. I've never been a foreigner going to live in a foreign country, leaving my family for multiple years. It's definitely something that he's had to work through. His family's had to work through. But I think he's handled it extremely well. I think, too, he's a little bit older, right, that a little bit more emotionally mature, I think that helps, certainly, but it cannot be easy for him. I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he'll tell you his teammates and his roommates, those guys definitely help as well. Family's tremendous, and I can't wait. They're coming here for, I think, 4, maybe 6 weeks. I'm trying to convince them for 7 or 8. But, to be here to watch their son, I can't wait for him to come here, because he's done great things since he's been here, and they're a phenomenal family, tremendous family.
Bring back the Big Ten's returner of the year in Charlie Jones, and I know he seemed dinged up quite a bit, but fought through it, of course. He's kind of like a rodeo cowboy in that regard. But what are your expectations for him this year, beyond doing what he did last year, which he did so well?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Charlie's a great kid. I think everyone, I call him a kid, he's an adult, but a really good guy and a really good football player. Charlie gives us a chance to score anytime he has the ball in his hands. So that's what we're trying to get, right? He looks at it, we look at it as an offensive play. Another opportunity for him to go score. You look at games where, as a kick returner, Illinois game, we were reeling a little bit. I think we were down 10 or 14, I can't remember. Bang, he brings one right back. Now we're right in the game. You look at other games where, as a punt returner, he's constantly trying to get his hands on the ball and trying to go. That is a huge, huge weapon. His confidence is a huge weapon. And some of the things we're working on is being fundamentally sound when he fields it, which he is. Now decision making. Last year we returned 37, I believe. 37. You guys probably know this better than I do. 37 punts, which is like way above average, way above anyone else in the country. Okay, so then you look at the average. His average wasn't great, but a lot of that is he's trying to return balls that maybe you'd be better off fair catching or letting die. But that's not Charlie, and that's what we have to know about. When's he going to take the risk? When's the risk worth the reward? And how much juice is in that squeeze, if you will, on a return. So, but again, I love Charlie. I think we all do. I think we've all been benefactors of Charlie and his playmaking ability. So we're just trying to get him to do that more, obviously, as many times as he can, and then being picky and choosy when he does.
We had some really good returners over the years, and like 10 years ago when Micah Hyde was doing it, he basically had to fair catch everything. And he had Desmond King, who did it a lot, and then there was a year he had an All-American cornerback who didn't do as well at that part of the game. And what is it, a mentality more than anything as to far as whether or not you're going to fair catch it all the time or you're going to take off, and how do you treat that mental game?
It's decision making, right? So decision making, risk versus reward. I'm glad you brought up Micah, because he fell on one with, I can't remember what game they were playing. I was watching with the Bills. He caught one, returned it, and fell down. And I said it reminded me of one he had. I think it was Michigan State 2012, where he should have scored, but he fell, slipped down. We were both laughing back and forth. But it takes confidence, right? You have to have nerves to steal back there, and you also have to have that mentality. You want to make a play. Otherwise, it's real easy. A lot of teams just do this. Hey, we'll take the ball wherever you punt it to us. There's plenty of teams that we face that way. But, for us, the way that we're built as a team, we need to make something happen. So with Charlie, I think you have that. And Charlie's not the only one. We have other capable returners that, that are raring to go too. So that part is fun. You get to work with guys like that.
Who else do you think could step up in the return game?
I think the guys have been working on it and doing well. AB or Arlen Bruce. Bruce is doing well. I think a couple other names like Cooper Dejean looks good back there. Partly last year, we ended up playing Cooper midway through the year, and the reason we played him because I felt confident in what I saw him do every day last year and getting back there, fielding balls. There were times where I told him, like, hey, if something happens, you're going to go back and catch it. I don't care if you just fair catch it, but I feel good about him making a decision back there, right? So those three guys. The other guys back there, Jameson Hines, Terry Roberts, I'm constantly trying to refine him a little bit and get him back there. Some other guys, young freshman incoming, again, should be in high school. TJ Hall has looked impressive back there. Alec Wick, who has been a pleasant surprise for me in spring. And then also Caden Wheatgen, who's a transfer in from Iowa Western, who was really good returning the ball in junior college. So those are the names that there's more names than we've had in the past, which is a good thing. And I think part of that speaks to the culture here and kind of how Coach Ferentz runs this program, that there's opportunity out there for everybody. And, we're looking for guys to step up. And, obviously I think Charlie has the nod right now because of his past experience. But, if someone goes out there, no one's hurt by having more options or more availability. And we'd like to at some point get 2 returners back there in the punt return game as well. So we've been successful when we've had that set up.
Going back to last year, the kick return touchdown against Illinois, the block punt against Nebraska, those were plays that were successful in part because of things that you saw on film. Going into the offseason, how much film are you watching, not just at the Big Ten, but across the country to continue to create those type of opportunities?
Enough. Right now we're focused on spring football. We did do that back in February and early March, and we'll continue to do that in the summer. And I'm glad you brought that up because 2 of those plays were really huge plays. Came from a guy, Henry Marquez, right? A guy who really embraced his role as a leader and then also as a special teams player. That's one of the, he and Ivory, to me, I brought those guys up already. Those are guys that really help propel us as a football team, and we're looking for more guys like that. Some of that is Henry seeing it the way I see it. Do you see it, Henry? Do you see this short edge? Could you block this punt? And, he'd say, yeah, and then we practice it, right? But my point is it really comes down to players seeing it the way you see it as a coach, and then how much can we put our best players in those positions. If that makes sense.
Sorry, I think it's impossible to quantify how much Terry Roberts has meant. I know, just on special teams, on defense.
I'm working on quantifying this because this guy is a phenomenal football player for us. But go ahead, sorry.
No, you're good. So just to clarify, he is still on pace to play gunner this season, and if so,
I hope so.
And who else is working there
Yeah, so-
alongside him?
Another thing, I think we've got a good group of guys, right? So you're talking about Gunner, talking about Terry. I think we've all seen Terry over the last 2 years, and I personally feel like the best football for him is still in front of him at all positions, right? And I think he has a chance to be a really good football player. But we're working on cleaning up some footwork, some of his techniques a little bit, maybe not so much always using just his flat ability to run. But also Moss is in that mix. Moss is a really good gunner. Cooper, Dejean kind of came on last year for us. He hadn't played that position. We threw him in there when we had a need. We had some guys that went down. But to his credit, he paid attention in the meetings. And he, like I said, he gave me confidence because he worked every day. He was the first guy out fielding punts every day, every practice as a freshman. So that kind of just let me know his mindset. You know, we're talking about gunners and coverage, but that gave me mindset to know the guy's a football player. Those three in there. I think Jamison Hines has come on, a young guy, young name that maybe hasn't been talked about very much in the past is Haas or Brendan Diaz-Fernandez. He's really stepped up this spring. It's been fun to watch, you know, because you can tell he wants to play and he's been kind of itching, but I think he's really taken the steps this spring, to push himself forward. Another guy in that mix that has been a pleasant surprise. I can't tell if he can tackle yet, but is Alec Wick, you know, another guy like that. And we're also working Charlie Jones back there as a gunner as well.
How much of the mental game is imperative for your position group? Because it seems like, I mean, there'll be 70,000 people out there, you know, when you have a Miguel Recinos lining up for a game-winning field goal or in Nebraska or wherever, plus punt return, because if your mind wanders for a flip of a second, the ball can kind of fall off and the other team can recover. So the mental part of it, how do you work that, or can you work that?
As specialists? Yeah, we work it every day. So we start off every meeting setting our intentions for the day, where we all have certain, we call them WIGs, or wildly important goals of the day. Right? What do we when we come in from watching the practice tape, we come in the afternoon or the evening or the next time we review practice, okay, did I hit this mark or did I not? Like, what's my wildly important goal of the day? What am I working on? Right? For a snapper, a lot of times it's even hands at finish, right? So their hands are even when they finish to their target. For a kicker, it may be consistent contact, right? So I'm contacting the ball, I'm hitting the sweet spot every time. A punter may be like Torrey sometimes will work on his footwork, right? His footwork is clean, or his hands, something like that. So those things, we come in, we all put them on the board. I'm like an elementary teacher writing up on the board, right? They tell me what they want to do. They write it in their journal. We set our intentions for the day. That to me is part of the mental aspect, right? And then you come back in and we cool down, we debrief, and we look at it and we watch the tape. Okay, did you do this? Did you or did you not? And then we go that way. The other parts I've talked about, I think, it's sort of, you listen to our sports psychiatrist talk. It's like, I always screw this up. Psychologist, I can't remember from Carmen. Okay, Carmen, who's been a huge help for us. Okay, but anyway, my point, if you listen to her talk, she talks about the value of routine. She talks about developing the muscle, right, the focus muscle in your brain, and to the point where you can repeat this over and over, and you don't allow the elements or the crowd or it broke up with my girlfriend or oh my gosh, that guy's big and scary to detract you from putting the ball through the uprights or putting the ball where you want to go, or if you're talking about returners, fielding the ball cleanly. Right, so those are things that we work on. We focus on those every day. We talk about them every day, and then we just continue to practice it until it gets developed. And we won't see it, I don't think, in spring football, personally, right? Because again, we're pretty young at the specialist positions, with the exception of Torrey. You look at Luke. Luke's the only guy. Luke Elkin, he's the only guy that's played in a game. He's a freshman right now. It's wild when you think about it. And he came straight out of high school, bang right into it. He wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting it, but he did it and did it well. So now I guess my point is I think we're going to see the best football here in fall camp and in the season.
So, go ahead, Tom.
With the holder position, no disrespect to Torrey or Nick, but Cooper might bring some other dimensions to this position. Does that factor in to any decision you would make with the holder?
Yeah, of course. But it starts with holding the ball and putting the ball through the uprights, right? So if that's what the field goal unit is on the field for, is to put the ball through the uprights. So if he's the best option for that, then that's the way we go. If he's not, then we go the route that puts the ball through the uprights. But he certainly adds a different dimension And Torrey and Nick are going to kill me for this, right? They're going to, oh, Coach, I'm such a good athlete. Did you see how fast I ran? Do you know I hold this shot put record? Right? That's what Nick would tell me. But Cooper's a different guy, different athlete. I think we all have seen that and know that. But my point is it's going to come down to who's going to help us put the ball through the uprights first.
Good segue, because that's my question. You said it was very even between those three guys, and we'll spend August writing about the kicking derby, but how far away, like, are they from Shudak, like, in realistic?
The kickers?
Yeah, like distance,
right now?
accuracy.
A long way.
Yeah.
You guys were out there yesterday, right? And I saw a couple of you guys out. Caleb had a workout with a couple
Yeah.
NFL teams. Guy was tattooing
Yeah, Caleb
footballs.
was great.
Looked phenomenal, right? So like, I don't think it's fair to say, three guys that haven't played a game to compare them to Caleb, because they're not at that point right now. And they know it, I know it, we all know it. And Caleb wasn't at that point a year ago, but he is right now. And so, I don't think it's really. Caleb is an NFL kicker, and whoever gets this guy is going to be lucky as all get out to have him. And whatever that future holds for him, but I don't think it's fair to compare our guys right now to that. I think it's comparable to maybe where Caleb was as a freshman, or where he was as a second-year player. I think it's fairly comparable. I think the guys, Caleb would tell you the same thing as far as leg strength. Hey, those guys are about like I was at that time.
Did I see Ryan still helping out in practice?
Ryan came to practice yesterday. Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I think he's missing football a little bit, but he came just to watch practice and help out. So.
Caleb provided you with some consistency in kickoffs as well.
Yeah.
What do you see developing there?
We haven't worked on that phase yet, right? Because we're focused on field goals. But I've seen Aaron kick off. I've seen Lucas Amaya kick off before. I haven't seen Drew kick off since camp. I don't think it's fair to put that evaluation on him. But I think we'll have capable guys. I know we'll have guys that can go down and cover as well to if we need to cover kicks and make tackles. But I feel confident in that. But I think right now it's too early to tell kind of where that piece is at. But you're right. It definitely was consistency for us at that position.
Your last couple of years, I mean, your unit has been praised, probably unlike most. I mean, special teams because of the coverages and, Torrey's punts, and then whether it's Ivory or Terry being able to knock it down at the one. How much has that really helped the selflessness part of it, but also just showing younger players, hey, special teams is cool, and you can still get on the field 25, 30 snaps a game, even if you're not contributing as a cornerback or a wide receiver or something.
I think it starts at the top with Coach Ferentz. You guys have heard me say this before, talk about when I was 20 years old sitting in that old building and listening to him talk about the impact special teams can make on a football game. I lived it as a player in the National Football League, right? It's how I made a living. And now coming here, it's very much the same. And I think if you follow us and you watch our football team, the impact special teams have made on games. You brought up 2 games, right? In Nebraska and Illinois, right? Those are huge plays that flip a game. And you look at Nebraska, again, with Caleb making those kicks. Those are huge plays. So my point to you is that I think we're on the right track with the culture and the mindset of where the players are at. Now comes the opportunity, okay? So you can ask the players, I'm not going to talk about it, but there's a slide I put up talking about opportunity because it comes disguised in a bunch of different ways. And I think if you have a growth mindset, if you're an opportunist, you can see opportunity in everything, good and bad, right? It may look like a pile of you-know-what to someone else, but to certain people, it's an opportunity. So my point is, I think it's all out there, and my job as a coach, our job as a staff, as a program, is to get guys to understand that there's opportunity everywhere. Again, I'll use Henry Marquez as an example till the day I'm done coaching. He came as a receiver, didn't cut it as a receiver, then moved over to DB, didn't cut as a DB. Could have easily left and, hey, I'm out of here, right? But instead, he was decided he was going to be a special teams player and be great on scout team. Same thing with Devontae Young, another guy like I'll go to my grave is always having respect for because of what they did and what they contributed to this program in that regard. So I think there's opportunity out there. It just depends on what you want to do and how you see things.
All right.
That's it.
Everyone.
Thanks, LeVar.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time.
Didn't need these, Steve.
Thank you.
How you guys doing? Hopefully nobody got caught in the storms last night. So I appreciate you being here and taking some time with us to talk Hawkeye football. Just to echo what Ray already said, we appreciate your time and carving out a little bit of your schedule to be with us. I'll make a couple of opening comments, statements, and then you guys can fire away with the questions. The first thing I guess I'd like to say, just with regards to our guys in the D-line room, is that I just appreciate the kind of guys that we have to work with. And we got some super young men that really come to work every day. They have good attitudes. They're coachable. They want to get better. They're doing the right kinds of things to get better. And it's just, after coaching a number of places, I can tell you it's not this way everywhere. So I really like the guys in our room, the cohesiveness, the chemistry that we've got going, and appreciate the way they go about their business every day. Real credit, really honestly, probably to their parents and their high school coaches. And they've gone about their business the right way here. So it's no surprise to me that we've made some good strides of improvement throughout the spring, which we can talk about as we go. They're doing a nice job, and we really think we're in a good spot. Hopefully we can finish strong here as we get towards the back end of the spring practices. The main thing that I guess I'd like to add before we go into the questions and so forth is just, I think spring ball is just a great time. I really enjoy this time of the year as much as any time. You don't have all the distractions of game week schedules, opponent preparation, all the kinds of things that happen in the fall that take you away from just being able to be with your guys and zero in on them. It's really, it's valuable time, it's great time, it's necessary time, but just to be able to tune out from all that other stuff and just focus on football one-on-one is really, really special. So I think we've made the most of it so far. Hopefully we'll continue along those lines. We're really trying to just build the fundamental base of all these players. We have 18 guys working in the D-line room with us right now. Not all are healthy, but that's how many are in the group. But like a dozen of those guys are either in their first or second year in the program. So you have people like Noah Shannon, John Wagner, guys who are going to be seniors that have been through this for 4 and 5 times now, be it through the spring or the fall. But you also have guys who have only been through it once, maybe twice. And so our job is to build their fundamental base, to put them in a position to hopefully give them a chance to be able to play and contribute in the fall, if that's what they're needed to do. And again, I think after 10 practices, we feel like we're in a good spot. But if we can stack together 5 good ones here as we finish down the home stretch, I think we'll feel like we've got a good room and some guys are ready to go play competitive Big Ten football. So with that said, any questions I can answer for you?
It looked like last spring that Lucas kind of flashed, at least in the open viewings that we had, and then he just continued to build on that and had a nice year. In what ways can he continue to grow, and do you see his strengths as more being an edge player or continue to be in the interior?
I don't know if that question's been answered yet. He played inside almost exclusively last fall, and just the opposite this spring. It's been good to watch him grow on the outside too. He does have a skill set that allows him the flexibility, I think, honestly, to be either or. And typically, if you look back over the years here, I think we've had players, or a player or two, that have had that flexibility as well. So I don't know that we'll answer that question right away. We'll for sure want to get through these next 5 practices, but it is a little bit different playing on the outside than it is on the inside. There's some more things schematically that get thrown at you, particularly when you get into teams that are shotgun run teams that do the zone read and all the quarterback run game stuff, which we don't see from our own offense. So it gets more complex depending on the team you're playing. So there's some things mentally that you got to do to, to evolve at that position that you don't have to do on the inside. But I guess it's a long answer to a short question, but it's a work in progress. It's a good thing for us that we have a guy like him who's capable of doing either. And who knows, maybe when we get into the season, if you have injuries, things like that go on, he may end up being either. We'll have to see how it plays out. But right now I think he's a guy who can contribute either inside or out.
How much would he have to develop to be an every down guy at D end? I mean, is he close? I mean, it seemed like he was
very close. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he could go out there and do that right now. He wouldn't be perfect by any stretch, but he would know the basics of what's required and would do a good job with it. He's an excellent pass rusher for a young guy, and granted, he's got some things he can do better there for sure, but he showed a knack for that last fall. I think he had 7 sacks or so on the season, and really had a good year that way. So we know that that's within his that's what he's proven he can do. Now that the run game part of it is where we need to see some things come along. But he's certainly in a good place, and I think poised to have a good year.
What have you seen from the early enrollees so far?
Well, yeah, the young guys coming in are probably like the young guys at other positions right now. They're probably swimming a little bit mentally. They're being asked to do some things that probably they've never been asked to do before fundamentally, and just things in the weight room, academic schedules. It's not just the football piece, it's all of it being thrown at them at once. Used to be when guys came in the summer, they would have a class or two, not a full academic load, and they wouldn't be doing 15 spring ball practices on top of it. It was a little bit different, but for these guys that have come in at the semester, it's a bigger challenge, but they're doing well. I think they're competing hard, trying to do the best they can. They are making some baby steps of improvement, and we just got to continue to keep working with them. And I think the material's there. That's the main thing. The ability base is there. It's just a matter of getting them polished up fundamentally. So that's a work in progress. We were just talking about Noah Shannon in the meeting room the other day, making reference to where he was, from his perspective, where he thought he was 3 years ago compared to where he is now, and talking to our young guys about that. It's and Coach Ferentz brought this up in a team meeting. It's not a quick fix trying to get from point A when you come in the door as a freshman to where you are when you're a polished player at your position. It's a long, slow, grinding process, and it takes persistence and perseverance and all those kinds of things. So just got to have a little patience, and hopefully it comes along.
I don't think we've talked to you since Xavier Wampa arrived, and I think you were the one that posed the question at dinner, right? Like, where are you going to go? Something like that, and then he said, "Oh, I'm going to Iowa," right? What was that moment like for you guys in there, and how have you seen? I guess I'm not asking about him, but just sort of that was a big moment for the program, recruiting.
It was, yeah. I mean, we put a lot of work into recruiting him like we do everybody else. He was more visible in recruiting just because of all the social media stuff that went along with his recruitment. But yeah, it was awesome. I don't think his parents or any of us were really expecting that at that moment, but obviously that was a nice surprise, and we were all really, really happy, and he's off to a good start here, doing a nice job for us. So we're happy to have X in the program.
When you look at Logan Lee, he always seemed to be dinged up for his first couple of years. You guys saw a lot of talent, but until you actually get out there, it's hard to project that. Mm-hmm. Last year, he seemed to be really ascending throughout the season and was one of the better linemen, I thought, in the Big Ten by the end of the year. What's kind of his trajectory right now, and both from a leadership perspective, but then also on a game, playing perspective?
He's a good leader. He does a great job working with our young guys, and I think to the credit of all the other older guys in our room and really across the whole program, I don't think I've ever been in a place where the upperclassmen have been so willing to help the younger guys learn the position, the tricks of the trade, so to speak. He's as good as any of them when it comes to that. But to your earlier point, he did have a good year. He had been through some injury battles, and now he's in a place where he's pretty much all the way healthy, outside of the little nicks and bumps that you pick up through the practices that we've had. He's shown a good continuum of development and improvement, and I think that we're going to see more of what we saw last fall from him, except even on a better, higher level. He's in a good place. He's doing a good job, playing well, and really becoming a good master of his position. So expecting good things to come from Logan.
Zach Van Valkenburg, probably just as a leader, was going to be really missed. I compared his stability to maybe Tyler Linderbaum on the offensive line, goes to media day last year. How do you go about trying to challenge guys maybe to step up into that Van Valkenburg role, just as far as being a leader in that room? I know it's basically everybody returns, but how do you kind of maybe challenge guys to step up and take over that sort of leadership role and stability that Zach had?
Yeah, I think that happened all the way back in January, as quick as, it was obvious that Valk was no longer going to be here. Guys like John and Noah really stepped up. Joe Evans, the older guys in the room, and did a nice job right off the bat, just being a little bit more vocal and a little bit more involved within that group. You have to be careful you don't try to push guys out of their personality and pretty soon they become phony if that's what you're trying to do. We certainly don't want that, but they've asserted themselves well, and I think that as guys compete and play in this program, they realize that as you work your way up the ladder, that's going to be the expectation when you get to be the senior, the junior, when you know that you're respected and your voice is going to be heard and it's time for you to step up, then you got to go do that, and those guys have. Certainly we've encouraged that, but it hasn't taken much nudging or pushing to get that done.
How much does NIL come up on the recruiting trail?
Not a lot yet, but I expect it to be a lot more on the forefront here as we go. We're going to be coming up into an evaluation period after spring ball's over. We'll be getting on the road late April, early May for a pretty good chunk of time, but it's not a time where you can sit down and talk to players. It's for workout evaluations, picking up transcripts, talking to coaches, those kinds of things. So any of those questions right now would be ones that would come over the phone. Once we get into the fall and we can actually get into the schools and sit down to talk to seniors face-to-face and get into parents' homes, things like that, then it'll probably become even more and more of an issue. But it's out there and it's not going away, and so yeah, it's going to be something we've got to talk about.
You worked a lot and lived a lot in central Iowa, and just looking at the layout of next year's class, how much time do you expect to be spending in the Des Moines metro area, come May?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be about equivalent to last year. Probably going to get into some other areas of the state, particularly northeast Iowa a little bit, just based on some of the plans that we have right now. Nothing major in terms of how it will affect my, time allotment, but that's going to be a place that I don't stray too far away from. That'll be really, really front and center for us.
Coach Bell last week said that he really wants the defensive line to emphasize the mental aspect of the game, like picking up on offensive cues. From your perspective, how have you seen that grow this spring, especially during a period where you can practice, make a mistake, go back, teach, go out, practice again, so on and so forth?
Guys are getting better at it. We're trying to something we talk about is, hey, you don't want to have to try to defend somebody's entire playbook every play. You need to look at a formation, figure out what they can and can't do out of it, and whittle down the possibilities of things you have to defend based on what you see. So that's what we're trying to get them to do. If a guy's looking this way or that way, it might mean I can only get these 3 blocks or something to that effect. So it's those kinds of things that we're trying to get them to understand. The older players obviously understand it better because they've already heard these messages for a long period of time. The younger guys, not so much. But it's like anything else. It's a matter of going into the film room, showing them something that we see in the picture of the formation, and bringing that point out to them so that they can understand why we're emphasizing it and what they either did or didn't see that we need to reinforce or be it positively or correct it. So, but yeah, it's just part of the mental aspect of the game and trying to get everybody to grow and learn and absorb as much information as they can before the ball gets snapped.
With
What are you
Van Ness
seeing
working
from?
outside, who do you see behind Shannon and Lee? They started all last year. I would assume they're doing in the front runner position there, but who do you see maybe backfilling that area? It sounded like YA's practicing
YA
just once
Black,
a week.
pardon me?
He's only practicing like once a week.
Yeah, he's got some academic conflicts that are making it tough for him to be around any more than that. But he's certainly a guy that is in there. Louis Steck is in there doing a good job, and then we've got a few younger guys behind him. That goes back to the original, probably first question of this whole process right here, which is what we're going to do with Lucas Van Ness. If we run into a problem, could he go back in there? Yeah, maybe he could. You'd hope that you wouldn't have to go down that path. You got younger guys like Jeremiah Pittman and some of those younger guys that are coming along and doing some good things too. And you don't know after 5 more spring practices and 20 camp practices what they're going to look like either. So it's a little bit tough to make that projection right now, but I think there's going to be plenty of material in there that we can work with.
When you look at both YA and DeAndre Craig, they both had a lot of reps last year, and some were good and some they're still pretty young. What's been their growth patterns thus far, and where do you see them ending up here in the next 6 to 8 months?
Both have been good. Deontay and who was the other guy you mentioned? Wyatt. Yeah. Well, again, Wyatt's been on a limited basis for us, so we haven't seen him every time like we have these other guys. But Wyatt's doing a nice job. I think he's got a tremendous upside just because of his frame, and he can move his feet and run and do all the things that you like to see aggressive, active D lineman be able to do. So for him, sky's going to be the limit. He missed some time with injuries and stuff last summer and in the preseason. I don't think we actually got him going until, heck, we might have been in the game 1 or beyond by the time he was really healthy. So he's got a lot of good football out in front of him. Deontay he's kind of like Lucas in that he's got a lot of good natural pass rush ability. He's good with his hands, good with his hips and feet. What we need to see him do is just continue to progress in the area of run defense. And I think he's done a good job of that over the course of the spring. He's shown a lot more grit and toughness and determination in some of the things that we do see him evolve in, hand placement, pad level, all those things that you look for that tie into being good in the run game. So he's on a good path. He's in a good place. If we can get 5 more good ones out of him, he should be in a good spot at the end of spring ball.
Where do you see Graves playing when he gets here?
Kelvin Bell and I were just talking about that the other day. He's mature beyond his years, let's face it. He's physical already, at least he looks physical, and I'm sure he's playing that way. He did in high school, and I don't have any reason to believe why it would be any different when he gets here. But just looking at his frame and everything, I think it stands a reason you'd probably expect him to play inside. However, we've had some pretty big ends. If you look back at Chauncey and A.J. Epinesa, and some of those guys are pretty big dudes. So really, I think we got to look at his movement skills, and that's probably going to determine whether he's inside or outside. If he could move well enough to play on the edge, there's nothing wrong with having big ends. So we'll just have to see how that looks when we get him here.
Is there an easier of the two, end or tackle, to play like earlier in your career? It seems like you're saying tackle, maybe?
Well, I think mentally probably it's a little easier to play inside because you don't get some of the schemes thrown at you like we talked about Lucas having to deal with. So that part's a little easier. But physically speaking, I mean, when you're in there battling some of those guards, not that the tackles aren't, but some of those inside guys are pretty big, and it gets real physical in there. So there's a little bit of trade-off, a little bit of give and take. But again, I think we got to get him here and start training him in the summer and seeing him move around before some of those decisions can get made.
When a couple of years ago on signing day, I remember you're pretty happy talking about Logan Jones, and I called him a rocked-up dude or rocked-up looking dude.
He still is.
Yeah, and now you're going against him every day in practice. What was your first thoughts when Kirk pulled him away?
I can't speak that in here. That'd be inappropriate. No. You know what? It was the best thing for the team. We didn't necessarily want to lose him. We didn't want to lose him because he was doing good. Was off to a good start, but you know what? That's a head coach call, and I think it was the right call, and we fully support it, and I think he's going to be a tremendous player on that side of the ball. Not that he wouldn't have been had he stayed on defense, but I think it's going to work out well.
Do you think, that he has played defense that's going to help him, just like it did Tyler Linderbaum?
No question. I think you gain some knowledge and some insight as to, the things that you got to do on the other side of the ball to be competitive and gain an advantage. And if you've been the guy that you're trying to block before, it helps you understand how to do that a little bit better. So without a doubt, that's going to be beneficial to him.
So do you and Kelvin have like a score sheet, like, okay, they took Linderbaum, but we got Logan Lee, now they get Logan Jones, we got next type of thing?
Well, we have some fun conversations about that type of thing, but, at the end of the day, we're just going to recruit the guys that come in here that we think have the best chance to play, and it's up to Coach Ferentz to decide where he wants to put them, and we'll coach the guys up that we got the best that we can, and I think we're in a good spot there.
I want to say over the last 5 years, maybe there have been 4 or there will be 4 first-round draft picks who are native Iowans that came from this program. What's the level of play like in this state now, and how is Iowa growing more and more players who are not only making the NFL in that regard, but also across the board are playing at Iowa or Iowa State or Nebraska or whatever? And what's the level of play been like now versus even when you were in Drake or Simpson or whatever?
You know, I probably have a biased view of it since I'm an Iowa born and bred person, but if you look at what's happened in recruiting over the course of the last 7, 8, maybe 10 years, boy, there didn't used to be the recruiting activity in this state that there is right now. You know, and a lot of people look at the Power 5 activity, but even if you look at the FCS activity, and you look at great programs like Morningside and Grandview and some of those small college programs that are, you know, national championship caliber teams, it just stands to reason to me that the quality of play has had to have risen for all that recruiting activity and that success to have occurred. I don't know what else you could say. So again, I would say hats off to the high school coaches, the people that are working with these guys to get them, you know, ready and to make recruiters and other programs from outside the state want to come in, you know, into Iowa and take a look at them. But I think it's risen.
As far as this happened before you even got here, and Reese's reputation is well known, but when you have you and I, for instance, going to produce a first-round tackle this year, last year a very good second-round tackle, and from very small towns who grew while they got there and developed, does that just kind of reinforce all of those things? Like under every rock there might be a NFL caliber player.
You just never know. You know, you look at Applington Parkersburg and the 3 or 4 guys that came up out of there back when Jared DeVries and Meester and those guys were playing. I mean, who would have ever thought it? And there's all kinds of small town stories around here. It's a lot of guys that have come and gone already in and out of this program, and hopefully a lot more that are soon to follow behind them. But that's a value of getting out there in May and spring recruiting and getting into some other schools that maybe you wouldn't have as much time for, like in December when we're trying to do bowl prep and recruit and get ready for a December signing, which we didn't used to have before. Boy, it's tough to be able to get to some other schools that maybe typically don't have a prospect, but now, you know, in May you're going to be able to make that stop and see that coach. And you hope you just get to a place where you find a diamond in the rough that maybe somebody didn't know about, and you may stumble across the guy that really turns out to be a good player for you. I mean, think of all the walk-ons that have been in and out of this program that maybe were in that boat and just got an opportunity once they got here and they took off. So that's what we hope we can keep finding those guys.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the opportunity to meet with you. Before I open up to questions, just to kind of frame where we're at right now, you know, coming out of the winter phase, we had an 8-week training phase where the development of speed and strength was, you know, at the forefront of importance. It was going into it was a little bit different than it was a year ago this time. You know, coming out of the 2020 season, we had our last game canceled, bowl game canceled. So we had a bigger recovery window from our last time on the field to when we first started off-season training. That was like a 5-week window. This year, a little bit different. You know, we played on the 1st. When we were back on campus on like the 16th. It was only 2 weeks. For the younger guys in the program that hadn't experienced, you know, that post-season transition, it was a little bit different, but they handled it well. I think we made definite strides where we need to make those strides in the weight room, developing lean body mass, getting stronger and faster. Across the board, I think, especially amongst our older guys, you know, when you're an older guy in this program, reestablishing personal records and really pushing in the weight room becomes more and more challenging the more mature you get in the program. And the guys, I thought, really set themselves apart, like Petrus, John Wagner, Monty Potterbaum, there's Riley Moss. There's a bunch of guys, older guys in the program in their 4th and 5th year that still achieve personal bests in several areas. So we were really happy to see that. Now that we're in spring football, you know, the gear kind of shifts a little bit. The importance is on, you know, recovery and also maintaining what we've gained over the winter phase. And once we get through spring football, you know, there's going to be a transition period there, and then we're going to transition into summer and things switch gears there again. But just want to give you guys a little context on where we're at in the weight room, and from there I will open up for questions.
What's your approach with these early enrollees as they kind of get thrown into the mix?
Well, we treat them the same way we treat a freshman coming in the summertime. We invest a ton of time in orienting them and teaching them the way we want them to do things. They're definitely a step up in terms of the learning curve by showing up here in the wintertime relative to the summertime. And they catch on quickly because they get thrown into the mix with the older guys at an earlier period of time. Through the winter cycle, those first 8 weeks, they're training by themselves in a separate group. The closer we get to spring ball, the more we try to get them integrated into the tempo and the tenor of what the other guys are doing. But they've done an excellent job adapting to what we've thrown at them.
How much of a difference does it make for them to be here versus coming in June?
Oh, I think it makes a huge difference, especially in the summertime where ramping up our conditioning, going into camp makes a difference. We don't, the conditioning volume's different for a guy that just starts out in the summer. Knowing that these guys have a full winter phase in their back pocket, we can get them into the Army, so to speak, at a quicker pace right out the gate to start the summer. So they're kind of treated much differently than if they were to show up in June. So
You mentioned Petrus. We talked to him at the bowl game. He expressed that he wanted to become more mobile, lose some weight. Is that something he brings up to you? Do you bring up to him? Because he said he lost about 8 pounds, I guess, over last season. And how does that work, I guess?
yeah, so I always make it a point to have an individual meeting with every guy on the team going into the winter phase, just to talk about goals and where they see themselves, where I see them, and discuss anything like that, like any personal goals that they have for themselves physically. And that's where he brought it up to me. He's like, yeah, I feel like I can be more mobile. I think I can lose a couple pounds. And so I got with him. We talked about nutrition, different eating habits he needs to establish, and he's taking those forward. And he's like, Spencer did this for himself, and he did a good job of changing his body.
It seems like each player that we talked to on Tuesdays, they said that they've hit a personal best, or across the board, most of the team has hit personal best. I'm sure that it's exciting every time the winter conditioning period starts, but how did you see the group this year really have that enthusiasm at the beginning and then carry it out through the entire program?
Yeah, well, strength conditioning is a big part of our program, and it comes from the top down. So it's more of a cultural thing as far as guys taking pride in their performance in the weight room and establishing those personal bests. And they see how the older guys, still push themselves. There's no complacency involved, or a sense of entitlement. Now that I'm older, like a 4th or 5th year guy, I don't have to push in the weight room as much as you younger guys do. Like, it's the high tide raises all ships, and the older guys establish a tone, and like I said before, a tenor as to how they're going to perform in the weight room. And the younger guys see that these older guys are still pushing themselves, and that motivates them to continue to push themselves as well. So, and I think that's seen in the way they perform. Like, it's much easier to establish personal bests like day after day after day with a younger guy, but when they see older guys still grinding and still pushing themselves and adhering to good habits away from the facility, the younger guys follow suit, and everybody kind of progresses in the same manner.
How are the Hawkeye championship teams, are they still formed in the same way as they have been in the past, and kind of what's been the outcome of those in the last couple of years?
So they're still, yes, to answer your question, yes, they're still formed by team vote, or excuse me, the captains vote on the teams, and they select their teams the way they see fit. The coaches have nothing to do with it. I have nothing to do with it. They just select the teams, and okay, I want you. And it's still formulated in the same way. It's all organically, from the team player-led, player-driven.
And how have you seen any differences, or are they still kind of exactly like they always have been, very, very competitive and respectful, I guess?
I haven't seen huge differences. The guys, when it comes, well, first of all, the captains are chosen by the players. So that getting the honor of being a captain is a big deal, and still is a big deal. And so guys wait their turn, the younger guys, and look up at the older guys, and eventually I could see myself being a captain. And they get to a point on the team where they've earned the respect of their teammates, and they get voted as the captain. They take it very seriously. And that seriousness kind of bleeds through everybody else in the team on that. And they understand that, one of the keys and one of the best things that comes out of the Hawkeye Championship is the development of accountability, and it starts with self-accountability. Like, if you're a captain, like your backyard better be clean with everything, academically, socially, athletically, and when they get to that point, they understand the importance of it, and they hand those lessons down to the younger guys, and younger guys eventually run with those lessons, and they become captains, and it's kind of like a self-perpetuating system that we have in place.
Do you adjust the training with the position switch? Like, so, for example, Logan Jones switches from defense to offense. Do you have to adjust his training at all?
Not really. He's already one of the stronger guys on the team, so strength isn't really Logan's limiting factor. There's other things, speed and change direction-wise, that he can improve on. lean body mass is going to be an issue with, well, I shouldn't say an issue, but it's something that he can kind of get a little bit bigger with the position change. I don't know how much bigger he needs to get. The biggest importance with him is, and with me when it comes to gaining body weight is performance on the field. Like if they're gaining weight and their performance is dipping, that's not a good thing. So that's where it all ultimately comes down to, is how they perform playing the sport of football.
Similar question. On Tuesday, Connor Colby said you got up to 310. How do you handle a younger guy who's a little bit more immature to the weight room, especially on the line, where you have to build them up in weight? Like, how do you do that responsibly, or do you just kind of go hard in the weight room?
No, you can't just have a blind eye to, how we introduce them and how they get stronger. Some guys, like everybody comes into our program with a different maturity level, all right? Some guys just played 2 sports in high school, and the rest of the year they spent training for the sport of football. Some are 4 or 5 sport guys that never really truly had an off season. Some guys come in, like Logan Jones came in very strong as like a 3rd or 4th year guy. You can't handle all those guys the same. It definitely has to be a person-by-person approach to the way you do it. Connor was kind of in between. One thing that helped Connor play early was the fact that he came in as a mid-year. So he had a full off season ahead of the other guys that were in the same freshman class as him. So that was that's a different situation with Connor. You have to be smart with what you throw at him because you don't want to burn him up. At the same point in time, you understand that he's going to be playing. So, especially in this window of time in spring football, the guys that are veteran players have a different programming than first-year guys or guys that are in their first off season. So it's definitely, we have to individualize everything that we do.
How important is that jump from year 1 to year 2, so freshman to sophomore year?
Important as in?
What specifically do you program for those guys rather than a straight rookie freshman versus a 4th year, 5th year?
Well, first-year guys, we're more worried about movement quality versus just throwing weight on them and see how heavy they can lift. It has to be quality of technique. We're not trying to load dysfunctional patterns as young guys. And once they establish, efficient movement, all right, then we can add weight to that. And you get to a certain point where strength you can't keep pushing strength, especially with your oldest guys, because they're so close to their peak that they can get fried, and there's other areas you can explore. But with a younger guy, I think Connor Colby is a guy that's still pretty far away from his physical potential that you can still be aggressive with him.
What's the challenge in keeping it fresh? Keeping what you're doing interesting for those guys?
Well, the challenge is not changing just for the sake of change. One thing you have to remember, so once you've been in a place for a long time, the faces change, but you haven't changed. So you may think I have to change, but the guy that's coming in the program, everything's new to them. They haven't seen, maybe 10 years old to me, or depending on what we're doing, might be 2 years old to me, but it's new to this individual. And some of the basics still work. And we have to become, like what we say here, brilliant at the basics. And they have to be very good at the basics before we want to decide to change things. We always say we want to have consistent variability in the way we design things. There has to be consistency in philosophy and why we do what we do. But there has to be some changes, some tweaks for, like we talked about, the older guys, so that they can continue to adapt and change as they develop.
You spoke on multi-sport athletes. Cooper Dejean is an example of that. How would you describe his development through the program in terms of strength and conditioning, and kind of where does he stack up athletically to the other skill positions on the team?
Cooper stacks up with, his multi-sport background has helped him a ton in football. Because there's certain skill sets you develop through playing a variety of sports that you can apply to the sport of football. And I think that's what has helped him a lot. He's example of a guy that has a relatively low training maturity because he hasn't trained a ton. So he's wired very highly, and I think he's one of our more athletic younger athletes.
What about Brody Brecht? I'm sure his regimen has to be different because you don't want to put a lot of stress on his elbow, for instance, and maybe does he do like the hang clean or doesn't do that because it could put pressure on different parts of his body?
Yeah, there's definitely some movements that the other guys do that Brody does not take part in. Since he's in season, I treat him completely differently. Like, it's a case-by-case basis for Brody. Whenever he comes in, he tells me exactly what he did the day before. from a practice or competitive standpoint, and he tells me what he has coming up the days following, and then we kind of curtail like what he's doing with us. Like some days he'll just come in, do soft tissue, do mobility, do some torso work, and then I kick him out after the warm-up. Some days, like today, he actually trained with football, and then he left. So we have to be smart with the way we train with him. Some days he'll communicate with me the night before, hey, coach, I'm just getting back into town. You know, I'd like to sleep in. I need to get some rest. I'm like, that makes a ton of sense because it doesn't make any sense for you. You're getting home at 12:30 in the morning to wake you up for a 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. workout. It's kind of counterproductive, especially if he's competing in the sport of baseball. So we have to be very intelligent with what we do with him.
I'm sure you know Xavier Wampa came out with a lot of hype. We talked to Kayvon the other day. He said he was a 6'3", 211. Is that right for Xavier, or is he exaggerating?
211 for his body weight when he came in?
No, now.
Now, yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
How has his development been? That seems pretty impressive already for a true freshman.
Yeah, so Xavier, when he first came in, he was 195 pounds. But it's very common for freshmen, when they get into our program and have access to the nutrition and the training that we provide, for them to have huge jumps early on. But he's been outstanding as far as developing good routines, having good habits. He's been an ultimate teammate. It's been really, really good to have him.
When you have a player that's kind of a tweener, especially now that the cash position is kind of a tween position, but let's say even like Jackson Rexroth, who broke a record in the squad, how do you go about developing them differently if they're, say, a safety versus a linebacker, because you may bulk them up versus shrink them down? How does that kind of work for you?
Well, Jackson's a unique case because he's the guy that I've had the governor on. Like he's got the body dimensions to be bigger than he is right now. So once it's established where we want him on the field is when I'll actually either keep the governor on or take the governor off as far as his body weight progression. But his strength is, relative to where he was. So he's coming into, this is his first true off season with us, and his strength has kind of jumped a lot. And I think he's going to continue to get stronger as he progresses in the program.
Is there a challenge in spring ball about making sure guys rehab properly, but still trying to make sure they excel in maybe other areas where they're not rehabbing? I think of Keegan Johnson had the abdomen injury. Is there kind of a struggle trying to balance that?
Not really, because when you're dealing with injured athletes, you have to remember they have an injured body part, not an injured body. So if, for example, if you're dealing with an athlete that has a lower body injury, there's nothing wrong with their upper body, there's nothing wrong with their opposite limb, and you can train those to the full extent that you can to adapt to, around the injury. But I mean, there's still, we want to motivate them to still push, still stay engaged, and I think that's one thing with any guy that's recovering from injury right now. They've done a good job of through these last, 8-10 weeks.
You mentioned the governor that you put on difference. I mean, what is the difference between training say a safety versus a linebacker, and how you would what kind of workouts would they do that maybe are different, and is it more a matter of how many calories they have in a day?
There's different caloric need if you're trying to gain weight. The specificity comes in the on-field training, like what they're doing specifically. There's nothing that's going to get you, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say there's nothing, but you're going to improve as a football player by playing more football, doing the specificity of the sport. The weight room tends to be more general than anything else. We're trying to work on general aspects of athleticism to improve their overall athletic ability. So those things aren't going to change. Whether you're a first-year lineman or a first-year running back, both those guys have to get stronger to compete at this level. So that's one thing you have to realize and always remember when you're programming for guys.
How much do you factor maybe some of the non-traditional things that you maybe don't think of right away as strength and conditioning, like mental health, for example?
That's huge. I think that goes back to the individual meetings with guys. You have to establish a rapport when kids get on campus initially, just to let them know that there's an open door policy and that you care about them outside of the sport of football. I think it's big for their own mental health, so they don't think they're just a commodity, a machine that's supposed to come in here, train, and then leave. They have to know that we care about them, more like all of them, not just the football part of them.
How are the markers? How do the markers compare to maybe the last normal off season you had? Whether it was, I think, going into 20, you've just finished in 2020 that year, or 19 even. How do they compare to now? I mean, as far as, are you hitting a lot of the same markers maybe you did back then?
We're hitting a lot of the same. A lot of what goes into hitting markers is also the makeup of your team. Like if you have a good sized senior class and those guys leave, all those strength numbers leave with them. And if you're younger, up and coming developing team, those numbers are going to change. So it's a moving target, so to speak. One good thing about being, in a program and in a system for, this is what Coach Ferentz's 24th year, you have a lot to compare, a body of work to compare yourself against. So, and this team stacks up with, all those other teams that have come before them in a favorable manner.
Do you feel like you've, in full-time role now, a couple of years, put your own spin on the program, on the strength program? You feel like it's really similar to what it was in 2020? How would you describe what you tweaks or whatever you've done to put your stamp on the program?
There's similarities and there's differences. I mean, the nuts and bolts don't change, but every year we have to stay relevant, and we're always evolving and researching and making sure we're on the cutting edge of what's out there in terms of strength conditioning. I think I'm a different human being. My personality is different. I'm a different guy. The staff's different. The staff changes and evolves, and with that comes changes in the way we do things and how we interact with the team. So,
Anything in particular you still want to do in terms of adjustments as now you're kind of finishing up year 2 in this position?
I just want to stay open to, I don't want to close myself off and be constrained by what we've always done in the past. And I think the guys see that. There's stuff that works that will always work, but we always have to stay open and don't stay rigid in our approach to training. I'll just say that.